Welcome to another episode of Voices. I'm your host, Keston Jones. Visionaries offering information with clarity, expertise, and substance. We are content experts. Let your voice be heard. Welcome to another episode of Voices. I'm your host, Keston Jones. Voices, visionaries offering information with clarity, expertise, and substance. And today we have a special guest, Mr. Kevin Nesbitt. How you doing?
Good to see you.
Kevin is a colleague of mine, and I thought it'd be a great opportunity for him to come on the show and share a little bit about his work, his research, and his role as a father and how he feels about fatherhood in general. So before I go on, I want to read a little bit about his bio so you can hear a little bit about Kevin, but I'll give him the opportunity to share more of that.
You make me sound important. Just a regular guy.
Yeah, all right. So Kevin Nesbitt has a career dedicated to working on behalf of students and faculty in diverse settings ranging from the Department of Education, charter school management, to higher education in both private and public sectors. Columbia University, the New School, John Jay, and presently at Hunter College as Assistant Dean for Student Affairs. His emphasis is on cultivating a culture of cross-trained academic and student affairs professionals engaging in high-impact practices. These efforts lead to equitable practices for faculty, student persistence and retention, and graduates prepared to engage in critical professions. With a focus on enrollment management at Hunter College, he currently oversees the Office of Admissions, the Welcome Center, financial aid, and various student success cohort programs and staff development at Hunter College. He is also one of the proud founders of Bedford-Stuyvesant New Beginnings Charter School, where he currently chairs the Family Life and Grievance Committees. So, you said that you're not important.
No.
I would beg to differ.
I'm not important. I probably just do a lot of stuff, like many people.
Absolutely. So thank you for agreeing to be on this show. And like I said, this is about voices. It's about people from different populations getting a chance to share their voices in situations where they often would not have the opportunity. And for someone like yourself, this is probably, not new to you. You probably speak all over the country. You're on TV.
Not on the lights.
But for the first question, please tell me about yourself and what led you to your desire to invest in the education of our youth, of adults. Why education?
Sure. So right before I do that, I should say I wrote the bio, so it means, of course, I said good things about myself. I was advised that I should say good things about myself, but they're true things. And the one other thing that I think will come out in our conversation, but it's super important, is that I have two kids that are my ride and die, ride or die and ride and die. I say that deliberately because I love them and I want to kill them at the same time, as most parents do, in that good sense of the frame of killing your children. I am an educator. I think of myself as an educator, and how I came to that decision, I guess it happened in a couple of ways, but what I think about most was that I have, and I'm fortunate that she's still alive and kicking and a blast, and just celebrated her 70 whatever birthday, maybe 77. I have a mother who was a huge advocate of education. She instilled it in me sort of in a very typical Caribbean way, where even more so, and it's almost inappropriate to say that today. Today we're all out voting, but even more important than voting, in my family, the belief was about education. Because voting may help you, it may not help you, it may sort of, and I'm a political scientist, so it's risky for me to even think this way, but way beyond the franchise and your ability to get up and walk to a poll and make a decision is what you can do for yourself and your family if you're educated. And my mother always instilled that in us. She fought for us. She'd go down to the Board of Ed and say, no, actually my child should be tested for the gifted and talented exam, and I don't understand why you're not willing to. And she'd stand there until they did, and then we'd get in and we would pass with flying colors because of the supplemental support that we'd get at home. So I was fortunate. I didn't have the family where there was a question about what does it mean to read and why would you read and why can't you just get a job. We didn't know if we'd all go to college, but we knew we had to be educated. And that was important. It stayed with me. So then naturally, when I got out into the field and began to think about what I wanted to do, and also having some family members with different learning challenges, it just happened immediately. So at around 16, or actually younger, I began tutoring kids as my first job, right at Boys and Girls High School, and then in East New York.
Shout out to Boys and Girls High School.
Right, yes, in Bed-Stuy. So I began, and I varied off the path in terms of what I've been able to do and how I've been able to contribute in education, but that core idea that you're sitting next to someone and you're helping them find the way to be their best selves through reading and understanding more about other people's perspectives. It stayed with me, and it just kind of moved me through where I'm at now at Hunter College.
Well, I certainly appreciate you and the strides you've taken to get to where you are today. I think representation is very important. And myself, as a professor, I'm teaching on a graduate level, and a black male.
Yes.
We often don't see that in the educational setting. So how do you feel about that in terms of representation and visibility, being a black male in the position that you have as a dean?
Yeah, I think it's really important because you need to feel comfortable with your community and your communities within the communities. And a part of that is seeing someone else who reminds you of yourself in some slight way that allows you to sort of be naked, right? To be vulnerable, to say, here's what I'm going through, here's what I'm experiencing, beyond the curriculum. And we as black men are able to do that for a variety of students. I don't get to do it as often as I would like to in a formal way at Hunter because of the portfolio that I have, but I find other ways to do that through the charter school network, through my own research that I'm doing as a old doctoral student who refuses to give up because I believe in the project that I'm working on. So I know it's important. Lots of people write about that, but for me, it's also something you find that you will always struggle to work towards. And I say that meaning that even as a professional at the level where I'm at now and where you are at now, I'm always still walking in a room and I still become this 6-year-old version of myself that's looking for someone else like me, someone that I feel I can connect with, and feeling vulnerable when that person isn't in the room. So it never really goes away, at least from my perspective. So it's important that we do it for the younger people around us, younger males and females, but also recognizing that this is something that's a lifetime sort of desire to find people you can connect with.
Absolutely. And speaking of connection, you and I share a connection in that we're both...
That you're well-dressed. Well, and I'm trying to be well-dressed.
That we're both doctoral students.
We're that too.
So let's talk a little bit about the process of being a doctoral student, and and please share your focus, your research focus. And when I say the process, a lot of people, they see this person who's a doctor and not realizing what it takes to get to that level. So can you talk about your respect of the process, where you're at now, and what kind of research you're doing?
Sure. So I remember entering my PhD program and sitting in class, and it was at the same time that my first child was going to be born. So I've been in class for a long while, right? It may have been, it was a master's program at the time in political science, and I was beginning to envision myself there in the PhD program, saying, okay, I hope if I get through these first 2 years, they will accept me as a PhD candidate. And I remember literally thinking about it in class and then deciding I need to leave at that moment because I got a message, and it was sort of one of those labor pain messages. We didn't have my daughter that day. It was 2 days later, but it was one of those labor pain messages. And so it's always been sort of tied. It's interesting that I'll tell you about what I study in a second, but it's always been important to me to pursue this because it's connected to how I envision family. And it's connected to it because I was creating family as I was creating this very selfish space, which is the PhD, right? Your dissertation is a very selfish activity. It's intellectual and it's important, but it's this selfish thing, right? That you do because you believe you have an important contribution to make, and it's also in some ways it's a luxury that many other people don't get to participate in, right? It's a lot of work, and when I say luxury, I don't mean to say that it's laying on a boat with champagne and people dripping and fanning on top of you, but it's a very luxurious moment in your thinking where you can say, I think I know enough about something, or I'm willing to learn enough about it that I can help change things for other people. So there's got to be a little bit of luxury to say I'm the person who can do this, and a little bit of ego to say I'm the person that can do it.
Yeah.
So in the middle of having enough ego to say you can do it, you then become deflated all along the way, because it's this really difficult process to take apart and come up with an important question, and then dig into every nook and cranny around that question where you can make it meaningful for other people. So it's, again, back to this theme of vulnerability. It's egotistical, but it's also very vulnerable, because you realize along the way you don't know much. The subject that I'm studying in particular is, I'm looking at it's twofold. I'm looking at how modern families are redefining and defining themselves today, and I look at just the American case, right? So I'm not looking at it internationally necessarily, although there's lots to be said about the international case as well. But in doing so, I've focused in explicitly on single fathers. Right now, if we look at the concepts of single parents, there's still some stigma to it, right? It certainly was a concept when the naming of single parents happened, and when it really became important in the 1960s. There was a lot of stigma around what that meant, and it was seen as a problem of low-class people, definitely of women of color, and the reality is that as I've studied the issue and decided to focus in on single fathers, I've learned so much more about it, and about the moment of agency and choice for many people that is not a part of the story, where they decide that their existence will be a meaningful one only if they have a child alongside them in this journey, and that may or may be without a partner. So I decided to focus on the men who are making those decisions from a variety of reasons. I'll throw out a stat, right? I'm not a statistician. I'm more of a qualitative guy. As you can see, I'm rambling on. So I like to talk, and I like to speak with people. But at one point, you'd see 1 out of 20 or less fathers in a documented fashion that were single fathers. Right now, the numbers vary anywhere from 1 out of 5 to 1 out of 7. So this is something that we don't think about in society. We don't have a structure for supporting these individuals. We don't have places where they can create their own sense of identity and voice, or describe their unique struggles as they become parents, as they take on this important role. And my job is not to say that it is a good decision or a bad decision, but it is to bring light to something that people are deciding to do. The way I'm trying to focus in on the issue, so that I can finish the dissertation first and foremost,
Absolutely.
And also make some decent contributions, is looking at the legal background around custody cases, and also around petitions for children made by men over time. So starting with 1800s, but focusing in more so from the 1960s, and thinking about how the best interest of the child doctrine helped us to create more spaces to either help or hinder single fathers from making that choice to actively participate in the lives of their children. So I'm going through the exciting part right now of reviewing all the legal cases and trying to learn legalese while I'm not a lawyer, and that's been really rewarding for me to do that.
Well, I certainly am I'm aware of this excitement.
Yes.
When it comes to research, and in working in my past and current with fathers in particular, and many of the issues that they have in family court, I've noticed that there aren't a lot of programs for fathers, especially single fathers. We have mother-child programs for moms who may be addicted to substances, where the mother is able to go into the program and not be separated from her child. And I've seen situations where the father was the legal custodial guardian. However, because of him not having housing, or because of him having a substance abuse problem, the system did not want to return the child to him, but rather sought to a kinship or foster care placement until the father got himself together. So this is a part of the work that continues that needs to be done, and I really applaud you, especially in knowing that this is a population that certainly needs to be supported.
What else is so interesting about what you're saying, Kes, too, is that this stems from. Of course, I'm going to support the legal aspect because that's what I'm studying, but as I really have looked at a variety of ways to look at the issue, because I've spent time looking at the work you've done with males and spending time in many of the centers and programs that you've led. But as I look at the laws are so constructed against men in this situation, where a father who is the biological father could routinely lose access to his or her children just because someone else married his former wife or former partner. And so the law is not designed on a state-by-state level to even say for a father that, okay, if we're going to put a child up for adoption, you generally have to check with the biological mother. There are many states where you don't have to even check with the biological father, and stuff like that still exists. And that's one of 10 examples that highlight how difficult it must have been for men to make a choice to say that my existence is going to be fulfilling through being me and also being a father, and then to say, and I'm going to do it without a partner, and then to have all of these obstacles in the law against you from even taking up that decision when so many other groups have laws in their favor.
Listen, this is good stuff, and I can't wait for you to finish this
Yes,
dissertation.
I need to do it.
So I can cite you in my research.
Right. I just need to do it. I need to be
But
done.
how does your role as a father contribute to your desire to research this particular subject? And what have you learned about yourself in research and fathers in general?
So I think a couple of things have occurred, and broadly speaking, it makes, when you study something, you become very judgmental, right? And you can't help that. That's human nature. So you become judgmental and you become critical. But but in the same process, it also makes you non-judgmental. I'll give you a quick example. So I hate to see parents screaming at their children on the street. And I was just talking to someone about that at work today when my daughter slapped my son in the eye, and I called Joel and I said, I'm not going to say to kill again. But I said, listen, I wonder sometimes, and my kids, if you hear this, I'm not only wondering at this moment, but not normally. But I said, I wonder what the benefit is when you just have one child as opposed to two, because you can invest in them, you can care for them in a different way. But then at the same time, I sort of forgave myself for yelling at them in public as I did when my daughter slapped my son across his face because he grazed her back and she thought it was inappropriate. And I realized, I said, wow, at one point I would have, probably gone home and written in a journal and said, I can't believe it. I yelled at my kids in public. I'm a black father. I'm against these stereotypes about our inability to raise our children without violence. And so I try to talk with them and educate them. But I just made peace with it. I'm a human being, and that I'm a father, and that sometimes I'm going to be stressed out like other people. And so in that way, I'm critical as I watch myself as a father, but I'm also much more forgiving of myself, saying, look, oh shit, I messed up. Yeah. This is what happens. But in the end, I still have my eye on the prize, which is looking at them, thinking about their talents and gifts, which is what I've seen from the research, right? That these fathers that I'm studying, either by meeting them in person, which has been some of the time I've spent in the work, or either reading about their struggles in the legal system, that they're trying to see their gifts in their children and the talents, and move their children towards really embracing those talents. And that's kind of another message in this work, that's kind of the work of a father, more than even being a disciplinarian and providing lots of money. It's recognizing the talents and helping your kids explore their talents. Yeah.
Definitely. Well, the work that you're doing is certainly needed, and especially for young folk coming up. Many of us, when we talk about parenting, when we talk about fatherhood, we did not have a manual. We didn't have any instructions for both mothers and fathers. We didn't have instructions to tell us what to do. So my question to you is, what would you say to like a young father, a young male who's coming up, and this is his first child, and there is this notion that the only way fathers can be beneficial to their child is they providing, monetary or what have you. So what kind of advice would you give to someone who's, just coming up and struggling with their role as a father?
Yeah, I would probably try to offer a lot of advice, because it is because it's a particularly stressful time to be a parent. And I imagine people could say this at any point in history, but we're living in such unsettling times. We look at who our president is, and and for most of us are still in a state of shock around the fact that we're living in a time where this is our president and that people made these decisions. So you're not just a father in that role, you're a human being who's a father, and you're dealing with the anxiety and stresses of living in this society with so much uncertainty about the jobs that you will have. Will you have to sort of recreate yourself 4 times? You can't just say, I'm going to become a shoemaker and that's the end of your life. You have to recreate yourself 5 times, right, as we all do. So I would say be forgiving of yourself, right? Be forgiving, but also hold yourself to a standard. So you'll make mistakes. I gave that example for myself earlier, but be forgiving of the mistakes you make, but always come back to the table. I would also advise young men in particular, with so many of the financial worries that we have, to focus on providing where you can, and don't make excuses for not contributing and leaving it up to mom. But also, as I've seen in the research, men contribute much more than is widely known. And so focus on the time that you can offer your children. There's lots of research on this, but you know it when you're a parent, that your kids care far less about the sneakers than they do about the fact that you sat there with them, that you dressed up. If I show you the pictures later, you'll laugh. In my incredible suit, it was a onesie. I was in a onesie and in an incredible suit, but that you dressed up for Halloween and that you spent that time with them, that you walked outside with them. That's what they value in the end. I would also just say, you know, as men and as brothers and as human beings from one to another, again, back to this notion of uncertainty, and that you're not just a father, you have multiple identities, right? But as you're thinking about this piece of your identity, remind yourself to love yourself, but also remind other males around you that you love them. I was talking to my best friend yesterday, and I always get on the phone and say, you know I love you, man. And then I make fun of him and tell him some inappropriate stuff that I'm always hoping they're not recording on the phone at work, because that's what we do. That's how, you know, this is my best friend, right? He knows where all the bodies are.
Absolutely, but
yes, but at the end of it, reminding him, you know, if you tell where my bodies are, I'm gonna make sure you go down too. I said, you know, I love you, and I was led to tell him at the end. I said, I know your son doesn't live with you anymore, and he hasn't lived with him for several years. I said, just text him and tell him you love him. Because I said, guys need to be reminded that they're loved, and particularly brown guys. We have to tell each other we love each other, and we must remind our young men that we love them. I try to do it with my nephews, even when I want to strangle them, because they're not finishing school at the rate they should. They're not exploring their talents. But no matter what, I try to just say, you know, I love you, right? You know, I love you. So love yourself and be forgiving of yourself, but also set standards. Don't be so forgiving that as a father you have not played your part.
Yeah, great stuff. And I think that's very important. And I think that's why, for me, we do the programs that we do within my agency to really show fathers that they're not the only ones going through something. And I feel that, shout out to the moms that we know, so many of us come from single-parent households, and we have strong moms that have invested in us, poured into us, and actually gave us great examples of what it means to be someone with fortitude and resolve and, you know, all these different things. So shout out to those moms. But definitely dads too, man. We need you. We need you to be a part of your children's lives, and even identifying a mentor, someone to look up to, someone that's doing what you want to do is very important. So that's why the groups are very important. And if you know of a fatherhood group in your neighborhood, please seek out that group. For older fathers, you can be an example for younger fathers. And for younger fathers, if you need support, try to reach out to someone to learn about how to be a better father.
Yeah, I got to shout out to my dad too. I didn't say anything about him, but shout out to my dad. I have a wonderful dad. I didn't appreciate him because he was a super serious, hardcore Jamaican, go to work, come home, pay the bills. But I'm so grateful that that's the dad I had, because I had stability when many of my friends didn't have stability, and I still have grateful that I have two parents, and now I can offer them a little bit of help, you know, in the ways that they always provided for me.
Absolutely, man. Yo, Kevin, it's always a pleasure seeing you.
Wicked.
Speaking to you. Once again, this has been another episode of Voices, visionaries offering information with clarity, expertise, and substance. Again, I'm your host, Keston Jones. What are your thoughts on this particular subject? What are your thoughts on researching fatherhood? For those fatherhood researchers, please, let's hear from you. Hear about how is your research going? Are you finding subjects? Are you finding literature to talk about fatherhood engagement? Let's hear from you, man. Kevin, how can we get in contact with you?
So I'm old school, and so you should email me, Nesbitt, KNESBITT research@gmail.com. Don't look me up on Facebook. Those pictures are not for general consumption. And I try to keep them private. I'm a crazy Caribbean, but I'm also doing good work.
Absolutely, man. So thank you once again. Another episode of Voices. Your host, Keston Jones, signing off. Peace.